Good evening. Welcome to the December 12th, 2023 meeting of the Oshkosh Common Council. The city clerk, can please take the roll.
Stevenson,
Here.
Bulow,
Here.
Hayes,
Present.
Esslinger,
Here.
Erickson,
Here.
Ford,
Here.
Muglebauer.
Here.
7 present.
The invocation will be led by Councilmember Stevenson this evening.
We ask for guidance tonight as we begin this meeting. May all those who participate in our discussions and our decisions reflect the values that we cherish in this great city.
And this evening, we have students from Lourdes Elementary and Lourdes Middle School. If Josh and Kate wouldn't mind coming on up. As I mentioned, we have Josh Bartley from Lourdes Academy Elementary School, and we have Kate Bartley from Lourdes Academy Middle School. So thank you for being here this evening. We appreciate you coming and helping us lead us in the pledge. If you wouldn't mind, why don't you tell us maybe teacher at your elementary school and favorite subject?
Miss Coates,
Okay. What subject?
math.
My teacher is Miss Score, and my favorite subject is reading.
Well, thank you again for joining us. We have a certificate here for you. There you go, Josh. Here you go, Kate, if you want. Well, thank you again for coming. Have a good night. All right. Next up is citizen statements to council. I have no one registered to speak tonight. Is there anyone here that would like to share comments not on the, for anything not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to consent. I'll take a motion and a second for the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion on consent? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Muglebauer.
Aye.
Carried 7.
We move to ordinances. Pending ordinance 23-640. Approve zone change from suburban mixed-use district to institutional district for the property located at 505 North Westfield Street. Plan Commission recommends approval.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Please take the roll.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Muglebauer.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Ordinance 23-641. Approve zone change from urban mixed-use district with a riverfront overlay to urban mixed-use district with a riverfront and planned development overlays. The property located at 627 Bayshore Drive. Plan Commission recommends approval. Take a motion in a second.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Please take the roll.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Muglebauer.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Ordinance 23-642 amends section 30-271, parts G5 of the City Municipal Code pertaining to commercial message and signage in Chapter 8, Article 4 pertaining to murals. Plan Commission recommends approval. Take a motion and a second.
Move it.
Second. Any discussion? Please take the roll.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Muglebauer.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Ordinance 23-643, this is to cancel the December 26th, 2023 meeting of the Oshkosh Common Council.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Go right ahead, Mr. Ford.
Mr. Mayor, do you want to explain why we're canceling?
That's actually a very good question. So historically, we've always not had the meeting falling just after Christmas. Given the time it takes to put an agenda together, the staff resources, that time of year, it can get a little difficult to make sure that that is put together with also accommodating their much-needed rest and relaxation time for around the holidays. So we've typically canceled that meeting.
Thank you.
No other discussion? Please take the roll on 23-643.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
On to new resolutions. This is Resolution 23644, approve fee schedule for sewer use charges for direct city customers.
Move it. Second.
Any discussion on this? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 23-645, this is to approve term sheet with Commonwealth Development Corporation of America for the Jefferson Street Low-Income Housing Development. I do have Mr. Tyler Sheeran, who is registered to speak to this. Come on up, welcome.
Good evening, guys. Obviously, it's not been too long since I was last year, but wanted to...
Can you move over to the mic, sir?
Oh, sorry.
hear
Just
you.
wanted to come up here, more so as a formality, answer any questions or concerns that you guys have since the last time I've been up here. This term sheet does kind of conclude what we need from you guys for submitting the application to WIDA. So assuming approval tonight, we should be ready to roll with the plan of submitting the app by the end of the year. So with that, again, happy to answer any questions or address any concerns or comments you guys have.
Sounds good. Let's put it on the floor if I can get a motion in a second.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Councilmember Stevenson, and then followed by Councilmember Bulow.
Sure. I guess first, do you want to just go maybe through timeline and how long that application for WIDA will take?
Yep, so the application will go in at the end of the year, and typically the awards are announced towards the end of April or early May. So obviously at that time, we hope to deliver good news to you guys, and then from there, we would be in the pre-development stage, with the understanding that we would then commence construction spring of 2025.
Okay, cool. And yeah, so thank you for giving that just kind of brief update there. But also, I'd like to say I really support this project. I've said before, I live very close to this development, and I'm happy to support an affordable project with city incentive. So
That's great, thank
I think
you.
that's it's going to be a really good use. I really like the daycare touch. I think that's awesome. It's a huge need in our community. So I think we're hitting two things here. We're getting that affordable market, and then we're also getting much needed daycare in a part of town that needs both those things. So
Appreciate
Thank
it,
you.
thank you.
Councilmember Bulow.
Joe took most of everything. Like he said, I live just a block away from it too. I had a question about the daycare. I know that it's definitely planned into the plans and everything. Do you already have a contract with somebody who's going to operate it, or is that something that's going to have to be developed as you go along? I know it's early.
So right now, we have entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Oshkosh Child Development Center.
Okay.
So it's a 501(c) right now that has been formed. They're currently not operating anything, but the understanding is if we do obtain the funding, they will work with an entity actually that's just north in Neenah with a gentleman by the name of Ty Gerber, who's currently running a very similar program. So we've had preliminary conversations with him, and then the understanding is, from there we'd have about a year and a half to really kind of put things into place. But loose agreement, yes, it's in place now, but still a lot to be ironed out.
Sure, absolutely. I love almost everything about this project, and the daycare really stands out to me, just like Councilmember Stevenson said, so I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
Any other comments? No, I think as I said, probably at RDA, I think it's the right project for that space. I think it's a good thing for downtown Oshkosh. It's nice to see that segment of our downtown redeveloped and have a fresh new face on it, and it's welcoming to see that, see your project and to see it to fruition. So happy to support it, and hopefully everything moves along on track. So
Sounds great. Thank you.
if there's no other comments, we'll take the roll on 23-645.
Stevenson,
aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Moving on to Resolution 23646, this is to approve a conditional use permit for an institutional use at 505 North Westfield Street. Plan Commission recommends approval.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 23-647, approve general development plan and specific implementation plan for personal storage facility use at 627 Bay Shore Drive. Plan Commission recommends approval.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilmember Stevenson.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to point out on this one, I think it's a really good, it's a really good use of we have what BSM, base standard modification. I think on the surface of this one, allowing storage in that area, you probably say, why are we doing that? But the building is in pretty rough condition, and I think the stuff that we're getting in exchange for allowing this use is going to benefit the neighborhood. It's going to be instrumental. So I think making that landscaping look a lot better, making the facade of that building look a lot better. I really want to just point to that because I think we've used that BSM, that base standard modification, a few times, and maybe people are a little confused by how it works, but really, I mean, the city is working with these developers and we're getting something in exchange, or working with an owner and getting something in exchange. And this is a pretty good example of that happening. So I just wanted to point that out.
Any other comments? Please take the roll on 23647.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 23648, approve conditional use permit for an outdoor storage use at the property located at 2840 Oregon Street. Plan Commission recommends approval.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
Resolution 23-649, this is to approve a specific implementation plan amendment for Phase 1 of a multifamily development at the West 3400 block of Lake Butamore Drive. Plan Commission recommends approval. I do have several people registered to speak on this. First would be Cheryl Borgart, followed by Kathy Brewer. Those would be the first two. If Cheryl or Kathy are here.
We want to move it first, Mayor?
Nope, this is for public comment first. They're not here. Next up would be Dan O'Callahan on behalf of Red Earth Development, I believe. So before anybody speaks to this, this will pertain to members of the public as well as to council. In front of us tonight is the SIP. So at the April meeting of the Common Council, the GDP was approved. That included base standard modifications, and that allowed for a four-story unit townhouses, 40-unit apartments, as well as 82-unit apartment uses. The SIP that's in front of us tonight for review, it is for our review of the final plans for consistency with the approved GDP, not to review any underlying land uses that were already approved during the GDP. What that means is the discussion tonight is in regards to very narrow, quite honestly, in terms of the 4 stories versus 3. It is not to rehash anything that was already previously approved by council in terms of land uses. Mr. O'Callahan, the floor is yours. If you keep it to 5 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. My name is Dan O'Callahan. I'm a land use and zoning lawyer, appearing tonight on behalf of the development team. We appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight. We're here to speak in support of the council's proposal to amend the SIP to allow a 4-story project as our team originally proposed. Based on the detailed financial analysis that our team put together, shared with the city, which was vetted by your financial consultant, Ellers and Associates, the 3-story condition of approval that was placed on the project originally by the council has rendered the project unworkable. So yes, this is about dollars and cents, but that's okay. We think that's perfectly appropriate. There's nothing wrong with considering the financial feasibility of the project. In fact, we think that's a normal part of the development process. The business of developing new housing is just that. It's a business. Thriving communities need housing, and housing doesn't build itself. I know there are many business people in the room tonight, and I know that they understand that business decisions need to make financial sense in order for things to get done. I'd hazard a guess that everyone in this room tonight lives in a house or an apartment that was once upon a time developed by somebody just like Jake and his partners. They're in the business of developing housing. And that's a good thing because the city of Oshkosh needs housing. And you don't have to take our word for it. Just look at the plans and the studies that the council has commissioned. Oshkosh is growing, and in order to grow, we need new housing. So yes, we believe it's extremely important for the city council to consider the financial impacts of the zoning decisions it makes on the housing goals that you set in your plans. Now, we do acknowledge that there are certain individuals who live near the site who say, that's fine, build the project at 3 stories, or if you can't do that, then don't build it at all. You see, they understand the situation as well as we do, and that is the project as we originally proposed it at 4 stories is feasible. The project with the condition imposed by the council that came at the end of a long meeting last April, and really without an opportunity for Jake and his partners to evaluate the impact of that condition on the project, that condition renders the project unworkable. It effectively kills the project. We didn't know it that night, but we know it now. And the individuals who oppose the project, they understand that as well. As I said, their position is build it at 3 stories or don't build it at all. But in order to build the housing that Oshkosh needs, we have to build the project at 4 stories because that's what's feasible. A 3-story project is not. We've listened to the objections, but in the end, we have a difference of opinion. We think that's okay. We think that's normal, that's healthy. That's part of a respectful debate about housing policy. But we're asking for your approval tonight on the amendment that would allow 4 stories. Not only do you have the authority under the city's zoning code to make that decision, we believe it's a decision that's supported by the evidence. We believe it's a decision that's supported by your comprehensive plan. We believe it's a decision that's consistent with the general development plan that the council approved in April. But most importantly, we believe it's the right decision. The 4-story project compensates for the extra height, in this case, by exceeding the city's design standards in several other areas. For example, the project's placement, the building's placement on the site, they exceed the minimum setback standards set by the city. The landscaping proposed for this development exceeds the minimum code requirements by 50%. The site plan for this project places the parking underground, reducing the impervious surface coverage, which allows for enhanced stormwater management. The exterior design of the building features enhanced building materials. All of these things together result in a superior project. Approval is the decision that's recommended to the council by your professional planning staff, and it's the decision that's been recommended to you now twice by your plan commission. Again, we believe it's the right decision to approve the 4-story amendment, and we're asking for your support tonight. We think this is a great project. We're excited to build it, but we can't do it without your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. James Reschke, followed by James Paulson. You can come. Are you registered to speak? No, I'm not. Then not at this time. Mr. J. Mr. James Reschke is up next, followed by Mr. James Paulson. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. James Rashesky, 3051 Bel Air Lane, Oshkosh. The reason the other members of our group weren't here because we thought as item 32 on your agenda, it'd take a little longer to get to it. So I'm going to stall as long as I can, 5 minutes. Okay, so within a half a mile of the southwest of this proposed development, there's 93 single-family homes. Within a half mile to the northwest, there's approximately 136 single-family homes. 109 of those are in the city. That's over 230 single-family homes within a half mile, which is outside the 1,000-foot perimeter that nobody receives any notices of. I'm within the 1,000 feet, so I got the notice. There was only a handful of us that did. Over 200 of these families are in direct line of sight of this monster development. I assume some of you visited this site to see what the proposal was all about, but what you really need to do is go to Bel Air Lane, Sunset Point Roads to the southwest, Edgewood Road, Edgewood Subdivision to the northwest, as well as the city streets of Shore Preserve Drive, Songbird Court, Sandhill Court, and Wood Duck Court to really see what the neighbors are going to be seeing with this development. Does it really blend in to the quaint, quiet, serene lakeshore front of Lake Butamore? This would be the only development like this on Lake Butamore. Okay, on November 18th, I attended the City Plan Commission meeting on the proposed project, item number 4, which was a planned 208-unit development on 20 acres along 20th Ave. Many of you have probably heard this, even voted on it. There's 16 apartment buildings with 6 to 8 units per building with a clubhouse and a coffee shop. The discussion on this development involved all the adjoining neighbors that provided input the developer used to modify the plan proposal. It was a wonderful breath of fresh air to see the developer, the neighbors, and everybody work together to make that development work. There was none of this done at this Red Earth proposed development. Why? Because the majority of us live outside the 1,000-foot perimeter of the proposed project. For something this large and high density, why wasn't that perimeter extended to maybe 3,000 feet instead of just 1,000 feet? In April 21, Red Earth proposed a high-density development in the Sawdust District, and it was turned down. Because Red Earth is a quality builder, and they do, they put some beautiful apartments together, the city found another location for this developer, Lake Butamore Drive, and proceeded to put several $1 million into underground water and sewer and suggested Red Earth build there. The surrounding 230 single-family neighbors are pleading with the city to find yet another location for Red Earth. This just isn't. This is a beautiful development with a lot of amenities. It should be built in Oshkosh, but in a different location than the quiet shoreline of Lake Butamore.
Sir, I'm going to pause you right there. I'm going to make sure you get your time. As I mentioned before the first speaker, tonight in front of us is the specific implementation plan. We are only allowed to discuss that this evening, not any previously determined land use decisions by the Oshkosh County Council. The only thing in front of us is the SIP, and that's the only thing that we're allowed to hear comment on, as well as us to make comments on. So if you could please keep your comments to the SIP in front of us. Thank you.
Will do. This proposed project, we're begging the council, please keep at 3-story. There's no reason to go to a 4-story. Yeah, they're going to be short $5 million on profit. They're still going to make money, okay? This is going to be, what, an $80 million development? I can't see where they're going to lose money. They've built 3-story apartment complexes before. Their website has beautiful 3- and 4-story apartment complexes. All right, so you've just killed some of the stuff I was going to say. Even though the surrounding wetlands will be preserved, no one can argue that the fact that this large development will adversely affect the wildlife habitat in this immediate area. And it really doesn't matter if it's building 3-story, 2-story, 4-story. The habitat will change. This is a great habitat. We see deer, we see ducks, geese, swans, a lot of migratory fowl. A lot of this is going to be changing. So I would encourage the council, please keep it a 3-story development. Ideally, it'd be nice if it were a 2-story development that would fit in more with the surrounding area. But we've got over 230 single-family homes. Over 200 of them are in sight of this development. There's nothing like this on Lake Butamore, nothing at all. So I encourage you, please, keep it to what you voted for in April, a 3-story development, not 4. If it's 4, you might as well build 5 or 6. What's the difference? Because Red Earth did say, when they were talking about it in April, from a distance, it looks like this. Okay, they're right. But close up, by all of us that look at it directly in line of sight, it's a lot bigger. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. James Paulson, and then followed by Mr. Bill Miller. Yep, and we did call for you, Cheryl and Kathy, but these gentlemen are in order, and I promise you, we will actually come back. Previously, we've done that with members of the public who've missed a comment period, and we'll afford you the same right. Yep, go ahead, Mr. Paulson.
Well, it is my intention to only speak about the 3-story versus 4-story thing. Thank you for letting me speak. The situation reminds me of a song by Joni Mitchell, which some of you might remember. It says, "Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? Paved paradise, put up a parking lot." In this case, it's not what we just heard. It's not a parking lot. They say it's going to be an underground parking, but there's probably going to be lights. And I really question the sensibility of underground parking in an area where there's probably a pretty high water table. But in any case, parking lights, 4 stories. And you might not think that this area classifies as paradise, but it is, as far as I know, it's the largest accessible natural area in the close proximity, in Oshkosh, or in close proximity, has an extensive marsh, lots of birds and other wildlife, and it's bisected by the Oshkosh Trail, which many people use for walking, biking, maybe snowmobiling, bird watching, fishing. I think the development as a whole is a bad idea, but last spring when you voted to limit it to 3 stories, I thought that was a reasonable decision. 3 stories would be less of a blemish on the natural area. But apparently the developers don't like that. We've heard that it's not going to be profitable enough. It's interesting that this decision seems to strike, shows them as, seems they have a sense of entitlement. They ought to be allowed to do what they plan to do. The city ought to just approve it. Give them exactly what they want, which reminds me of big corporations like football teams that they don't get what they want. They'll say, oh, we'll move to Los Angeles or Las Vegas. So, and as the previous speaker mentioned, I have little confidence that they won't come back in phase 2 and say, oh, we've got to make this cost effective by putting it up to 6 stories. So in conclusion, I just urge you to stick with your decision of last spring. Have the courage to stick with that and not be bullied by the developers. Oshkosh needs public housing, but this is going to be a very special kind of special kind of housing. People are going to be fairly well off to live there. You're not going to have single parent families or people of modest income, because it's far outside the city. It's going to be almost like a gated community. It's so isolated. And what you decided in the spring, I think, was a good compromise. You gave the developers something, the permission to go ahead, but it also made some deference to people who use that natural area and use the trail. And so I thought that was a good compromise, and just 3 stories would reduce the blemish, reduce the damage to the natural area. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Bill Miller, followed by Cheryl Borgart. Welcome.
Mayor, thank you, Mayor. Can I approach, and I got a brief handout here for everybody. I'm sure everybody's seen this, seeing as you just got through the budget battles.
I can hand them out if you want.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want this up here
Diane.
for. Is that the right way?
I think so. Scott, the projector in a second. There you go.
Good, everybody? So, Bill Miller, 300 North Kohler. Thank you all for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm going to take a different approach on this 3 to 4 story conflict. Mike, it's my first time I get to throw you under the bus publicly, so, but I was sitting up there the last time we visited this thing. And Mike, you made the comment that you felt it was a really good compromise. I know you're a principal guy and I know you're a process guy. But I thought about it the next day, and I didn't get 5 minutes in, or somebody gave me 4 minutes, just so you know. Roll off, wake up.
I'm looking at your,
Oh, okay. You only gave me 4 minutes to start
I
with, so.
think you were passing.
Yeah. But, like you said, you felt it was a good compromise. And the next day, I kind of kicked that around a little bit, and I thought, no, it was a terrible compromise because we didn't involve the one party that it affected the most, the developer. We didn't say, hey, is this going to change? And they probably would have looked at us and said, we don't know. They would have said that night. Now we know this project does not work at 3 stories. So let's stay very specific on that. We never asked them, but yet that council, my council at the time, made the decision to make it 3 stories without any input from the developer whatsoever. That was not fair. So I don't know what the numbers were. It's a significant shortfall. But what this shows, what this shows that I handed out, I'm tying it together for you guys. But what this shows is the tax burden per residential home in the city of Oshkosh. We put the largest tax burden out of all of these communities on our residences. Projects like this subsidize those taxes. Tax the hell out of them. They're not complaining about what their tax bill is going to be and anything like that. The shortfalls in funding for DEI, sustainability, homelessness, drugs and overdoses, streets, it's severe cash shortage. You guys all signed up to do the right thing. I know you did. We just prioritize what we think is, the way to go about it. Everybody probably thought there's a pot of gold, as I did when I got on council. Hey, I'm going to make a big difference. I'm going to find this money. I'm going to solve all these problems. Well, guess what? That pot of gold does not exist. We are an incredibly poor community. Projects like this subsidize our real needs. Without these projects, we get 0 tax revenue growth. These guys came in good faith, didn't ask for a tip, didn't ask for a penny, and we kicked them in the teeth. This project should absolutely move forward. This will open that whole corridor for development. It'll be housing, it'll be businesses. It'll be amazing for the city, not just from a revenue standpoint, but that's what pays for things. Castle Pierce can come in tomorrow and build these buildings. They can absolutely come in tomorrow, the same height, the same everything. So why are we penalizing these guys, pardon me, for doing an amazing project? Anybody else can come in there, build a commercial property, a church, a Woodman's, anything at these heights. Correct, Kelly? I mean, so why are we penalizing these guys? Why are we being so punitive to a developer that wants to work with this community? Doesn't want a nickel from us, guys. We don't have to tip this. We don't have to pee tax dollars away on stuff like this. So I just want you to think about the needs we need as a whole in this community. And it's got nothing to do with this particular project. This should move forward. It should open up more development so we can tax the heck out of who comes next so to subsidize our real needs. I mean, come on, we got homeless issues here that are jumping out of every quarter. I've got a homeless person living behind my generator at 144 High. Never had that before. We don't have any money for that stuff. This is how we get money. This is how we grow our community. It's just that simple. Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm a little bit passionate about this, but this is a no-brainer, in my humble opinion. Something will go there, and it will be less attractive than this project. That's a simple reality of it. If somebody's not going to do housing here, some big developer is going to put in some ugly box that I don't want. I really don't want that. But this is how we pay the freight. And the other thing, just let me finish up on this. How does this look to outside developers? We're kicking these guys in the teeth, putting them through the three-ring circus. You think any other developers are going to want to come in here and do this stuff? I don't think so. So, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I know this is difficult for all of you. I get it. I understand it. And good luck with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl Borgart, followed by Kathy Brewer.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello. I'm fine. How are you guys? So I would just like to correct some of the things that were just stated. These developers came into this project asking for a TIF. We did an open records request, and emails dated back to February of 2021 show that the initial email from the developer to the planning committee asked for specifically a TIF. So his information is completely incorrect. I did send an email to this council indicating that very same thing with the emails attached, the original emails attached to my message. And in response to that from Mr. Esslinger, I got the response, to me, this is new information because I was not on the council when this first came forward. My response to that is literally, what? That means that any and all decisions prior to your joining the council are subject to your reversal, as all would be new information subject to your review. In other words, you know better than any previous council member, and therefore their decisions made are wrong and irrelevant if you deem them to be. The old saying, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, is appropriate in this situation. Your philosophy is both dangerous, flawed, and, to be quite honest, insulting. Mr. Stevenson's response to me was, we can all have different opinions about what new information is, but the reality is Carl got the votes to reconsider, and that's what's happening. I repeat my previous response to that. Mr. Stevenson also told me that I would also like to remind everyone that council cannot deny this project. We can only make decisions based on our city code. The item for discussion is the fourth floor. Otherwise, everything else they are proposing is legal, and council cannot deny a legal conforming project, just like we could not deny someone's house being built just because we didn't like it. My response to that is the city's process robbed the surrounding community of the opportunity to voice our concerns about this project from the very beginning. The decision was made by the city to not send out notification to the surrounding community that this project was being contemplated. 2 years of discussion and planning. It was approved before we even had a chance. So now, since the city has literally shoved this project down our throats, we are relegated to fighting to keep the height of Phase 1 within conformance of our surrounding community. And we did that. Now you're going to rob us of that. Mr. Stevenson, the zone does allow for apartments, but would require a base standard modification for the 4th floor. Modifications like this are given all the time as an incentive to provide more landscaping or better aesthetics for a building. Essentially, it's a tool to give a development something while the city gets something it wants. Well, what was that? What did the city get that it wanted? Was it apartments? Is that it? Because I'm sure this isn't the last apartment project that will come into view here in Oshkosh. Nowhere in your response was any mention of what the community that it is being built in the area of wants. Not one time. But then again, how could the city know what the surrounding community wants? The city purposely excluded the surrounding community for over 2 years while this project was being planned. The developer and the city will be getting everything they want with no consideration to the wants and needs of the surrounding community if this amendment is reversed. Sorry, it breaks my heart that you guys are going to do this here tonight. Breaks my heart. I understand that Red Earth LLC has had the experts review and sign off on this. But it is important to remember that experts don't always get it right. In 2021, farmers in Central Virginia's Louisa County dealt with stormwater runoff from Dominion Energy Belcher's solar project. The stormwater spilled into a nearby creek, temporarily turning it into a raging river. This was in 2021. They had all the proper experts look at it. They had holding ponds. They had everything planned.
If you could please try to wrap it up.
One of the members of the board that approved this said this is a catastrophe. It is ruining the farmland around that area. It's destroying it. Thank you.
Thank you. Last one who's registered to speak this evening is Ms. Kathy Brewer. Welcome.
All right. Hi. Good evening, council members. As a resident of Oshkosh and advocate for many of our concerned residents, I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you tonight. Last week, I sent a letter to the council providing a more detailed description of some of the points that I'm going to talk through tonight. I know that not everybody read it, so I do want to hope that we have the time to go through this. First, there's a noticeable discrepancy in the developer's cost per unit for Phase 1. Originally stated in their application, their planned development application in December 2022, as a maximum of $150,000 per unit, is now 62% higher at $243,000 per unit. Why? This amendment was for Phase 1, 2 buildings to move from 4 stories to 3. What the developer did showed incorrectly that they factored the height reduction for all phases. Again, the SIP is Phase 1 only. Also important to note is their claim that they cannot make 3 stories work. They can and have for every other apartment project they manage, including the Abbey in Onalaska and Grasslands in Holman. The discrepancy is concerning not only for its financial implications, but also for transparency and accountability. Second, while it is important to use the 2040 Comprehensive Land Use Plan as a guideline for development and zoning changes, there was no official zoning change here. The comprehensive plan, quote, offers a 20-year vision where zoning ordinances directly influence immediate land use decisions, unquote. The base standard modifications granted for this phase, as well as the GDP, circumvent the standard process of a zoning change. Mark Lyons claimed in April that the clause for minimum lot area justifies the density approved in this instance. However, this interpretation leads to the exclusion of all other requirements of the zoning code, such as setbacks, plantings, parking, building separation, and rights of way. Under the NMU zoning ordinance, apartments are allowed at 3 to 4 units per building. Yet the BSM provided by planning services exceeds that allowance by 1,000% for Phase 1 and 2,000% for Phase 2 and more. As a member of this community, I'm concerned about the precedent this sets for future development and the respect for our established zoning ordinances. What was the justification for this modification? The 2021 housing study. For my third point, there is a misalignment with the housing study's findings and the current pace of development. With a significant number of multi-unit complexes already built or approved, 736 to date, and another 500 and more for this one, it exceeds the study's recommendation for high market rental units needed by 2030. The study showed only 129 units were needed in this market rate. This means that the already built and approved projects exceed the need by nearly 1,000%. This point deserves attention for balanced community growth. It's imperative that development aligns with our actual community needs, particularly in terms of housing affordability and availability, which directly impacts many of our lives. Fourth, what is the precedent that reversing this amendment will set? It's important to note that among all major routes from 41 in Oshkosh to De Pere along 441, Highway 10 through the Fox Cities, and Highway 45, residential units do not exceed 3 stories. This sets a clear precedent in our region and does raise a question about equity in reversing the amendment, as all other developments within the NMU zoning districts in Oshkosh have adhered to the height restriction, with far less BSM impact. I heard Bill Miller say that Castle Pierce could put 60 feet on their building. Well, they could now, but Castle Pierce was built in 1962 and expanded in 1998, and it's highly unlikely that they're going to add 30 more feet to the height of their buildings, so that's a moot point. As a committed member of this community, I'm concerned about the developer's admission in April of not wanting to live next to such a development, coupled with their recent admission of indifference toward the environmental impact of their project, specifically its potential harm to wildlife and migrating birds. I urge the council to consider the implications of reversing the prior amendment. Such a decision could be conceived as endorsing a project that doesn't align well with the values and interests of the people who actually live in this community. Our community deserves development that is not only economically viable, but also respectful of our environmental needs. And I do want to add, we're not saying the project should not be built. What we're saying is that we want it at 3 stories.
If you could please
And
wrap it up.
one more paragraph, sorry. I'm going to finish it up real quick. As someone deeply invested in this city and its future, I urge the council to maintain the 3-story height limit for Phase 1, as a prior council so reasonably compromised in April. This decision is more than a planning choice. It's a statement about our community's values and our commitment to thoughtful, responsible development. Thank you for your time and consideration of these points, which reflect not just my views, but the concerns of many in our community.
Thank you. I have no one else registered to speak on the item, so I'll take a motion and a second for council.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion. Councilmember Stevenson.
I'm, I guess, just going to address what I viewed as maybe a disparaging comment. What I want in this community is for us to be better. I want this community to succeed. So when I said the community gets something they want, we get a high-quality project and housing that we desperately need in this community. My brother is a young person. I'm a young person. If you know any young person in your life, you know that they can't find rentals right now. It's astronomically hard to find a quality rental in this community. So I just want to make that point of clarity and say that I will be supporting this amendment, and I'm glad that you guys are going to be bringing well-needed housing to our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Esslinger.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few items. After Mr. Miller ended his comments, I wanted to get up and applaud. I thought his points were fantastic. He is right. I know that when I get on the council, I want to, as a conservative-minded guy, I always wanted to save as much money as you can. And here's someone that's going to, I would hate to get the tax bill for this thing because it's going to be enormous. It's going to help out this community. Councilmember Stevenson was 100% correct. My daughter rents and pays a fortune for renting right now. It's not getting better. I'm a real estate agent. I can tell you the housing in this community is terrible, whether it be single-family homes or trying to find rentals. The demand curve now is completely with landlords. They can charge basically whatever they want and have hoops that you have to go through in order to even rent from them. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's good for the landlord. But I do want to address the lady that came up, mentioned my name. She sent me a few emails. I don't know if the rest of the council got them. One thing I wanted to talk about is in the email she sent me, there were a couple attachments, as she stated, emails from City Manager Roloff and Community Development Director Nyforth. And I read the attachments, and I read them again, and I read them again. I'm not a smart guy, I'm telling you right now, but I didn't understand the point of what she was even talking about. To me, it sounded as if the two subjects were either doing something illegal or untoward. And I read those and I didn't see anything near that. So if I have that wrong, I apologize, but I don't think I do have it wrong. And to insinuate something like that, no, it's my turn. And to insinuate something like that is irresponsible and should, quite frankly, I think you should apologize. The words you said to me, ma'am, in one of the emails, and I'll quote you, "Clearly this project means something to you beyond what it should." What in God's name does that mean? Am I making some money on this, ma'am, or do I know these people, something a little under the table? Again, what's the insinuation? It's ridiculous. Look, I know you don't like this. You know, there's things I don't like. I get outvoted on this council all the time. I go home and that's the way it goes. The tax implications are huge here. Quite frankly, I don't know, Ms. Neeforth, what's the difference, the height difference between 3 stories and 4? Just generally,
Probably 17 to 20 feet.
I mean, in typical multifamily housing, a story is 10 to 12 feet,
Okay.
depending upon pitch or roof and amenities. Usually it's in that 10 to 12 range.
Okay.
okay. So it's 10 to 12 feet more than a 3-story. I don't get it. I don't understand what is so terrible about that. So I'm okay with 4-story. I'm okay if they want to build 5 stories. I don't care. This is progress in Oshkosh. It may not be what we all want, but again, the tax ramifications here, the amount of money we're going to get with this, and it's next to a highway. I don't think the people going along the highway are going to mind looking at it. So I think this is really much ado about nothing. And coming up and giving your points is fine, but when you start insinuating things like that, that's just clearly out of bounds, So with that, I'm voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Buelow, followed by Councilmember Ford.
Thank you. I've been communicating with city staff a little bit to try to get some background information. Since 2018, only one multifamily unit development that they could find did not have some sort of a BSM plan development overlay compromise on it. There isn't multifamily projects that just fit cleanly into the box. That's what the whole process is for. You get more landscaping, they get more of this. You get more less parking outside. The building goes a little bit taller. That's the whole point of the BSM progress and the whole point of the planning committee. And like I said, since 2018, we could find one that didn't, that didn't have some sort of a compromise on it. I got a bunch of emails on it also insinuating that somehow, yes, that I was getting money or that I should have known that it was going to be a TIF shortfall. Mr. Roloff, can you please share with everybody the date that we found out as city council what the TIF amount was going to be for the 3-story building?
I believe it was over this fall.
Yeah, it was October 10th. Yeah,
Okay,
at
close
our
enough,
closed
yeah.
session. So yes, it was at that point that we did have new information about what the shortfall was going to be. And it's not that they're going to make less money, it's that it is financially not reasonable in terms of a loss. And so they came to us and said, hey, can you, as a city, provide TIF to make this work? I'm not going to disclose what was discussed in closed council. That's not what, or closed session. That's not what this is for. But for me, this project doesn't qualify for TIF. It's high-end housing. It's not what you would use TIF for. And what that means is that this is a discussion between 4 stories or 0 stories, just like the developer said. It doesn't work at 3 because I'm not willing to vote for a TIF for it, so it works at 4. The units needed, we've been told, you know, only 700 high-end units were needed, only 129 more needed, but that also ignores the fact that even in our own housing study, there's a $5,000 or 5,000 unit immediate shortfall. That's what we need to continue to build. But currently, we have a 5,000 unit immediate shortfall, and that we're nowhere near catching up to. Mr. Miller brought up some great points about homelessness. Obviously, that's something that's very close to me. The answer to homelessness is more homes. It's, you know,
Excuse me. No, you've had your chance. The public comment is closed. This is now time for council members to make their discussion and comments. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Buelow.
Yeah, no problem. Tax money, of course, helps towards that, but the answer to homelessness is homes. Right now in our community, every single available apartment gets between 30 to 60 applications immediately. We need more apartments. That's just the absolute situation that we're in. The only last thing I'll say is that when I was running for city council, the 2 things that I was running for is more homes and special assessments. So when I look at this agenda, it makes me very happy because we're talking about both tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Buelow. Mr. Ford, you're up next.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I don't think we've handled this one up to our standards, in my opinion, myself very much included. You know, I was on Plan Commission for 6 years, 3 years here on council, and during that time, not once have I voted against a new development, not a single time. Not because I'm a rubber stamp, but because our process worked in a manner consistent with my values as an elected representative for 67,000 Oshkosh residents. Development's a balancing act. How do we balance our long-term housing and economic needs while we respect our residents? How do we protect taxpayers, preventing a race to the bottom? We pursue new projects. How do we balance new development with environmental impacts? How do we have a fair playing field so we're not picking winners and losers? And for me, it begins with people. Every resident has a right to be heard. We made mistakes. Not having that first neighborhood meeting on this project, and having the open house the day before the first vote was inconsistent with those values that I hold so dear. I can share countless examples on my time on Plan Commission where we worked with the residents, we worked with developers to mitigate the impacts of a new development through compromise, leading to outcomes that help meet our housing needs without tearing our community apart. It wasn't intentional, but the process in this project sent a very clear message to our residents that you don't get to have a voice. It's not okay with me. Again, 6 years on Plan Commission. I've been involved in plan developments where we're consistent with developers, explaining that base standard modifications require a comparable offset. Every project has these. Well, apparently one didn't, and that shocks me. I assumed everybody had this. And most of the asks on this project tonight, they were very consistent with past practice. The glaring exception, when we looked at this the first time, was the 59-foot height in a zoning that allows 35 feet. That's a large ask. To be consistent with the way we've worked with every developer in the past, at least in my 6 years, we needed to articulate how the offsets were comparable to the ask. I think we've done a better job tonight and in the updated packet that's in front of us tonight of presenting information that does justify such an offset, but we failed to articulate that adequately the first time around to both the council and the community. And I got to speak directly to the notion that the amendment came out of the blue or it was not talked about. Well, I had conversations at the open house. That's just fact. Maybe people didn't listen to me. Maybe people didn't take me seriously. I can fully reconcile the fact and admit the fact that other council members outmaneuvered me on that regard, but that doesn't mean those conversations didn't happen. So to suggest that I'm kicking a developer in the teeth or somehow anti-development is wholly inconsistent with my record up here. It's insulting and it's a little bit hurtful personally, and I'm just sorry to hear that, but you know what, I guess it comes with the territory. But most concerning with me, to me in this position is the willingness of this body to undo a compromise we made with those we serve. You know, honestly, some of the communications I've received on this telling me to be careful because other developers are watching, it's just absurd given my record, but it's also missing the point. Nothing is more damning to an outside developer or an outside audience than us showing that we make promises, we make decisions, but they don't mean anything. we as a democratic body can undo anything at any point. Why would any developer want to come with that kind of inconsistency? It's the reason you leave a blackjack table when you're at Vegas, because the guy next to you is playing crazy, right? Consistency matters. And I get that circumstances change, but for me, and I'm speaking just for myself, the threshold for breaking a promise I made to the residents of the city of Oshkosh is a heck of a lot higher than a private developer asking for public assistance. Because if that was the threshold, I'd have to break promises all the time. Every developer wants private assistance, right? We know this. The developer came in with that, and that's okay. That's part of the process. So I'm not against public assistance. I'm not against this project. But, you know, all signs point to me being a minority of one on this vote. And I respect the right of my colleagues to vote for their own reasons, just like I am tonight, and I will respect the majority decision tonight the second the vote is over, and I'll root for a dang good project. But how we do things absolutely matter. I'm not running for re-election. I have no horse in this fight. Horse in this fight? I don't know. I got no horse in this race. But I can't in good conscience support the way we handled this one. We made mistakes, and we need to own this, and that's why I'm voting no tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ford. Any other discussion? Councilmember Hayes.
Thank you. I think for me, I'll start with just the idea that because there was an initial ask regarding TIF, that any formal request for TIF support would mean that in some way any of the parties involved, the developers, were, I guess, hiding the ball on this. I don't see it that way. I think that there's a lot of discussion that goes into development, and options are placed on the table. And you look at viable options as a way to reduce some of the out-of-pocket costs. So I don't see an initial request about TIF to be an indication that the developer always intended, even if this were a 4-story development approved by council in March, that they would always request TIF. I can say that I do not think that this is a project that should be supported by TIF. And if that were the question before us today, with the information that I have today, I would say no. I agree with Councilmember Ford that a decision was made by council in March, and without something greater, we should not overturn that decision. However, I also agree with procedures that we have in place to reconsider, and understanding that what I've heard even from my fellow council members is that mistakes were made along the process in deciding to unilaterally move this from a 4 to a 3-story. I think the process allows us to reconsider that. And when we do get something wrong, we don't necessarily have to stay with the consequences of getting it wrong, especially when there's still time to fix it. I also agree with Councilmember Bulow that the immediate need for housing outnumbers what even this development would give the city of Oshkosh. And I understand that for this scale of a development and the location of the development, that not everyone is going to be happy about it. But I am also someone who understands the need for housing, immediate housing. And while most of my time has also been focused on affordable housing for the residents of Oshkosh, we need housing. And 500 units for the city of Oshkosh is a lot. And so when I sit here and I make a decision as a council person, I am making a decision based on all of the information that I have before me, those who have come forward in opposition and in support of this development. And although today, as we sit here, we've heard more opposition, I urge everyone to consider that we've heard many that are in support. And so it is not if we do not agree with keeping it at 3 or any other decision that we are not listening to our community members. Because it's more than those who have come forward today that have spoken to us, whether we're out in the community with our families, whether it's an email, whether it's here at these meetings. And so I never want anyone to feel as though they're not being heard and their position is not being considered. But what we have to do as council is take the entire community into consideration. And because of that, and because of weighing everything that we as council members have to weigh, I would have to support this being 4 stories. And I can say that I don't agree that at any point should council have amended the ask from 4 to 3. I agree, it should have been a yes or no to the request for 4. It wasn't. But I don't think that because of the failures, or it's not even a failure, because of missteps or mistakes that the past council made, that it means we cannot consider that, especially now that we have additional information. So I would have to support this being 4 stories. One last thing, I think it's also necessary to stress that the motion brought by Council Member Bulow and voted on sent this back. And today is not the discussion on whether that motion should have survived. And that's part of the process that we go through. Today, it's not about whether it should have been brought back or not, because it was, and it passed with a majority vote. So today, we do sit here only on whether this should be, as been said before, 4 stories or none. Because we know without 4 stories, it's not a viable project. It's not feasible. And so it's not that I don't listen to the fact that many people feel that there was no new information. I do consider that.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anybody else? I'll make just a couple brief comments. Councilmember Hayes, that was very well put. I couldn't agree more with many of your points. On the flip side also, I don't disagree with much of what Councilmember Ford said either. And I've got a lot of respect for the position he's taking and how hard he holds that position too. So I'm very thankful for the amount of diligence that this council has made on this topic over the last, not just tonight, but over the last several weeks and months. I know it's not easy when somebody's going to do something you don't want, something that impacts you, potentially personally. We have to balance the needs of the whole over the wants of a few. That is our job. Every day of the week, anytime we're up here. It's not easy. It's not fun. You're never going to make everybody happy. But in the end, I think, as I said that Tuesday night back in April, I'll paraphrase, we got it wrong. And I'm in support of a 4-story project. I think it's the right thing for this space and for this community. As I travel the state, I see projects of similar size much closer to residential developments in very similar spaces. And it's it's not surprising to me that it does work. But we have to have a willingness to allow it to have a chance to. I appreciate all the comments that we have gotten, the inquiries, the questions. This is the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to hold us to a high standard and hold us accountable and try to make sure that we hear you. There's a difference between hearing and listening, and just doing what someone wants you to do. I feel very confident listening to the comments from my colleagues this evening that they have diligently listened and have heard the comments of those that are so passionate about this project on both sides. And with that, I'll be voting in support of a four-story through the SIP on this one this evening. If there's no other comments from council, I'll the city clerk take the roll on 23-649.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
No.
Mughawar,
Aye.
carried 6.
Thank you. Final resolution that's on the docket this evening, it's Resolution 23-650. This is to ratify declaration of emergency issued by the city manager on May 25, 2023, in response to blockage of city water filtration plant intake pipes, and authorize emergency actions, purchases, and/or contracts for services, and amend 2024 capital improvement plan for these purposes. I have no one registered to speak on this. I'll take a motion in a second.
Move it.
Second.
If there's not discussion, I'll actually ask the city manager if he wouldn't mind. I know there's been some press on this. There's been some public releases. Want to make sure you have a chance to tell the people what we need to do in a short order.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back in May, I actually declared an emergency because the intake pipe for our water treatment plant is about 50 to 60% covered. It's probably 60% covered now as we speak. And our backup pipes, which are old pipes that we previously had used, were damaged by ice shoves. So we're in a situation where we had both our main pipe at risk as well as our backup pipe. So I declared an emergency, fully expecting that the work we were doing, the DNR would give us approval for eventually, and wouldn't really have to act on that emergency. Well, unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, the DNR informed us that a Chapter 30 permit, which we had applied for, was not going to be approved. With the assistance of Representative Palmieri, she arranged a meeting with a representative from the governor's office and DNR senior management, and we were able to impress on them the urgency, because what happens with the blocked pipe at this time of year, when I declared it in May, it wasn't a concern in May. It becomes a concern when winter comes and there's something known as frazzle ice, which essentially gets created underwater when so much velocity is on the intake pipe. With a constricted pipe, it can actually create ice right there in the pipe itself, which would block our intake pipe, which would put our city at risk. I think we were successful in impressing that upon the DNR and the governor's office. And so we are now, with the DNR's full knowledge, are proceeding with implementing that emergency. So now I'm coming to you to ask you to ratify it. The staging, you may already see, it's over at Menominee Park, some of the staging area. It is not anything to do with Pratt Trail. Pratt Trail is down for the season because we can't be doing that type of work. But we have a lot of work to get done to prevent this frazzle ice from becoming a problem. What we're actually going to do is, with a contractor, essentially blow the pipe out towards the lake. We're going to put a curtain in the immediate outfall of this pipe because it's going back out to the lake. What the sediment there is filled with is sand and zebra mussels. That's pretty much what it is. Other finer components we clean in through the treatment process already. But that buildup is just to excessive, so this curtain that we will build around the water will prevent the water, the sediment, from blowing out into the rest of the lake. Now, typically, it's pretty churned up in Lake Winnebago, given the fact that it's because of the Fox River being what it is. But we felt it was necessary to put those precautions in place to protect the environment as much as possible. So I expect the work to begin within the next 1 to 2 weeks. My preference would be 1, but it really depends on the ability of the contractor to mobilize and get all this equipment into place. So we're crossing our fingers that perhaps they can begin next week. The process is about anywhere from 3 to 13 days. So we're saying we expect it to be done by the end of the year. We're very hopeful for that. The reason being is because we want to make sure that we don't have frazzle ice potential there. if we do it while the weather's still mild, relatively mild for winter in Wisconsin, the chance of frazzle ice is reduced. So that's why the urgency to get this done before January hits, because we know what happens to the lake, it freezes over, but it's all the activity underneath the surface of the lake that's really the concern. So we've let people know about this now, so that any questions about what's going on over there, they're aware of it. But I think we've got a plan in place that will prevent an emergency from really coming to pass, because certainly drinking water as well as fire prevention or fire suppression, excuse me, is really the concern we have. So happy to answer any questions. I know you've asked me a lot of questions. If I've missed something that I think is relevant for the public, please ask away, because I think it's important that we get the word out as much as possible.
Councilmember Buell.
Thank you. Mr. Roloff, in our packet, we have it listed as, it's going to be about a $1.5 million project, correct?
That is correct. I think we may be up to 1.8 million, correct, James? Because doing it with short notice,
sure,
we're probably paying a premium for it. James?
The 1.5 that's listed is where we're at with our agreement with Northern Divers right now. We've certainly incurred other costs with our engineering consultant along the way, trying to help us get this through the DNR for the last year plus. But that 1.5 that you mentioned is specific to the contract that we're working with Northern Divers on.
Sure. And I just wanted to call out that a bit of the funding you were able to pull from other projects that came in under budget, and I thought that was important to highlight.
Yes, there, every year as we, work on all of our projects across, all of our funding sources, we're always looking for, where things may have come in under budget, due to favorable bidding conditions, and that is a significant portion of this, and that's the CIP amendment is to, move that funding from those projects that have come in under budget into this project so we can get this done.
Sure.
Two points I just want to make, or two comments I want to make. One, I need to give, I think it's important to give credit where credit's due. Former mayor, current Assembly Representative Palmieri, want to give credit to her and her staff and her office for stepping up and making the right connections for our city staff with the state representatives to help facilitate some productive discussions, doing exactly what we hope our state representatives are going to do for us when the time is needed. So much appreciated there. And second, two nightmare scenarios for me ever since I've gotten on this council. One is the inability to provide clean, safe, reliable drinking water to the residents. And two, a place for that dirty water to go after it's done. We have to do what we have to do. So fully supporting of City Manager Roloff and taking the actions that he's needed to take to ensure the health and safety of the community. So, Councilmember Ford.
I totally agree. Just quick question. So in there, just clarify, or I guess confirm for the audience, for the crowd, this ends December 31st, the emergency, or when it's no longer a situation, that's the plan?
I think we're going to keep the emergency in place until we get some other portions of this project. We still, at this point, we're only doing the intake pipes. Then there's another portion of it that's called the transmission main that at this point, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Robbie because I'm going to butcher this with the technology. So James, why don't you explain?
So yes, there's two parts of the primary pipe that feed the water filtration plant. There's the intake, which goes from the lake to a structure in Menominee Park, kind of at the north end of Pratt Trail where the navigation channel into Miller's Bay is. And then from that structure to the water filtration plant is what we refer to as the transmission main. All totaled between the two, over a mile of 60-inch pipe. So the immediate need that we're aware of is on that first intake, but we've been unable to inspect the rest of it because we haven't been able to get in, through the intake pipe itself. So we'll get that done, then we'll work with the contractor to get some more inspection done. Once we get this done, they may be able to do a remote radio operated a rover to try and do some of that inspection, but we can't tell if we can do that or not until we get this first part done.
Okay, cool, thank you. So either way, obviously, you'll keep us updated and keep it on outstanding agenda items.
Yeah, so I don't expect only the council that can declare the emergency over. Recall COVID, we declared the emergency over after a certain point. I don't think, the short answer is I don't expect it to happen immediately. But yeah, we're going to keep you posted. You know, one of the issues with the DNR, and this is sort of full disclosure for everybody, the DNR is concerned about the environmental impact, and that's their job, and we understand that. But the, you know, differential in the different approaches, I think what staff has done, Linda Moore, many of you know Linda because you've seen her here with Jacobs Engineering. I mean, they've done a lot of work to demonstrate that what we were proposing made sense. There are two methods. One method is about $8 million more than the other method. And while, and I think we have a responsibility to protect the environment, but we also have a responsibility to be good stewards. I think the less costly job, we can mitigate the environmental issues. And I think we're gonna have to spend time demonstrating that. And that's what staff's gonna keep working on until this project is complete.
Thank you.
I see no other buttons pressed. If the clerk will call the roll on 23650.
Stevenson,
Aye.
Bulow,
Aye.
Hayes,
Aye.
Esslinger,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Mughawar.
Aye.
Carried 7.
That concludes the action part of our council agenda. Moving on to council discussion, direction to city manager, and future agenda items. First up, strategic planning session, March 4th, 2024. Staff will be working on a location, but do plan on this being a full day, 8 to 4 type of endeavor for full council. So, any questions on that? Please see the city manager.
The location really close. Mr. Mauer is trying to get the new shelter ready. I think we're going to be okay, but Ray doesn't want to give me a 100% promise. He's got like a 98% promise on me right now. And that'll be exciting because then you'll all get to see it actually be used, so it'll be wonderful. Although I think we overpromised, and we had GoHNI have their meeting there, and I know the mayor and Councilmember Ford were at that, so I think they can attest to how the facility is. So I want you to see it firsthand. I think you'll enjoy it.
Good acoustics.
Just a reminder, get Councilwoman Hayes' bacon for that day.
Yeah, I think I heard that.
Warm breakfasts.
Next up is council discussion of special assessment options. This is a carryover from the November 14th council meeting. We had left that meeting with a little bit of guidance to staff in regards to just some analysis, I think, on at least one option of utilities picking up a portion of the special assessments, as well as combining that with a modest vehicle registration fee. I think that was one of the things that we wanted from staff, as well as the impact of what that would be on the utilities.
Yeah, it's incorrectly listed in 34A. It really should have been in 35A, but if you look there, that's that rate analysis that the mayor and I think several council members had requested, and that's, it just shows you the range of the differential between that reallocation of $750,000 for each of the utilities, and it ranges from 0.25% to 0.5% annually with each one.
Okay. If I remember right from the earlier, the approval of the sewer use charges, if my math was roughly correct, that small amount was a little, maybe right around $1, was what I thought it was.
I'll let Mr. Van Gompel confirm that.
Trying to make sure that.
Yeah, trying to make sense of it.
While we know, 1.5% is quite small, but I think the real thing is what helps most of us, helps those who are listening or writing about this is, what's the impact on the average homeowner, so.
Yeah, if you look at just the sewer, it was about $1. If you look at all three of our utilities, it's about $2.62 a month.
Okay. You'll see there was supporting documents in the council packet. Do we have any questions on that analysis or any? I know Councilmember, these are kind of coincide a little bit because you also have some talk about deferment as
Yeah.
well. So, I mean,
Yeah.
they kind of do go together, because that was still part of the conversation that we had previously.
Well, and Councilmember Ford, are you looking at deferment for all special assessments or deferment for the ones that we voted on last week, like with the new utilities?
No, I'm talking about a policy change.
Okay.
I mean, do you want me to go into that, or I don't want to, I think it's a different conversation. It's related, but.
Yeah. Well, I guess, why don't we take up A first, I guess. Then.
Yeah.
Is there questions, comments, concerns?
I'm comfortable that direction if that's what you guys need from us.
Yeah, I think, because there's the wheels that got to get going in motion
Yeah.
in that. And I think we probably need to, do some public education, because you've asked a question and, yeah, we got to just get that out. I certainly had some discussions with the chamber president, because, previously they'd taken in, they were very much against the transportation fee type of option, and they were curious about that. And I've volunteered to go to them. And I think it would be appropriate to perhaps do some informational sessions with people, particularly as it relates to, say, the vehicle registration fee, because that's going to be one of those that there are legitimate equity issues. But the fact that it's part of a package, I've expressed to the mayor and several of you my concern about the VRF being only a part of it. That kind of lessens that. And I can work with something that the council can work out on this. So it's a package. We're certainly prepared to get that going. But with it being the holidays, I think after the first of the year, if this is something you want to do, I think we need to hit the streets and get this word out as much as possible to educate people, get input, and then put you in a position where you're not going to get 100% agreement, as we know from other things that we've discussed this evening, but at least get the word out so we get some good discussion about it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Yes.
We'll, at the first of the year, we'll be talking to you about how we want to engage. I think it's going to involve a lot of things. And if you've got any thoughts or ideas on something creative or something we've done in the past that you like, and let's do it again, please let me know. I certainly want to, we need to hit the streets on this. And so I'm happy to work with any and all of you, as well as members of the public.
You can always find that pot of gold that Mr. Miller was talking about.
Yeah.
It's in his checking account.
If there's nothing else on this part of the discussion, it doesn't necessarily lend it moot, but
Yeah.
I want to give Councilmember Ford the time to discuss number B. Or
No,
number B.
I don't think it's moot at all, and maybe you'll agree with me, I hope not, but I put this as a discussion item, hoping we can move forward with an ordinance that creates a way for qualifying residents to defer their special assessments. Including in the packet is the Eau Claire deferral process that I think is worth mirroring. I don't think this ordinance undermines, or moving forward in this direction, undermines our work to replace special assessments at all. Ideally, we get to that point, but it's a very specific solution to the very specific problem of residents facing the loss of their homes due to a special assessment. Some background here is, like all of you, I'm tired of telling people who are facing the loss of their homes, they come up here, that, hey, we're working on it, we're going to find a comprehensive solution. Nothing we can do to help you right now. I just think that's plain wrong and not acceptable for any of our residents to face financial ruin because of a special assessments. So the ordinance I shared is from Eau Claire. It's a comparable city, comparable form of government. They created a process, and if you read the ordinance that's there, it starts with the City Council acknowledges that the levy of special assessments can result in extreme financial hardship in some instances. It therefore enacts this provision to provide necessary relief to persons affected by such a levy. So it's, again, a very specific ordinance. The way this works, it defines the problem. It allows residents whose household income is at or below 80% of the Eau Claire County median income to apply for a deferral. And a special assessment actually is a lien on the property, as we all know. Basically, the deferral process allows that lien to stay on there until the property is sold. So the ordinance lays out certain requirements. We have income requirements. We have a process by which a private individual would share that financial information with a committee in closed session, so they're not declaring this stuff publicly, but it's a mechanism by which we as a council can review and make sure that, yeah, this is actually a special assessment that's putting this person's ability to own their property at risk. Like I said, doesn't stop our larger work on special assessments at all. We still have to create the application and process, and I'd suggest we mirror Eau Claire since it's already in action there. There'd be a modest cost, of course, because we'd be bearing the cost as a city of any assessments we do defer. But I also note that because we're deferring those assessments and putting a 6% interest rate on there, it does turn into a long-term asset for the city that we collect on when the property is closed, or is sold. I don't think we get a ton of applications, but at the very least, it allows us to provide a real option that has precedent in Wisconsin for residents who are facing a loss of their home due to a special assessment. So that's a really specific inequity that I think we all find unacceptable, and I think this is a really specific solution that I hope we can explore.
Councilmember Erickson.
Thanks. I'm supportive of this concept. I wish this is something that we would have had, when I first got on council. I think approving special assessments are one of the hardest votes that I think I've had to take. But I'm wondering about timeline. So say, we're supportive of this. We want to see this move forward. What's even feasible in order to get something in place before, say, we also vote to replace special assessments with a variety of options? I guess there's two timelines that are kind of running parallel.
Yeah.
What's feasible?
Yeah, and I mean, I'd have to ask the city how long it would take to get something like this up and running, but I can tell you, 3 years now, and it's 6 years we've been working on a policy, so I don't know. I hope we find the perfect solution, but past behavior tends to predict future behavior, so if we don't, I would really like to be able to resolve this specific problem.
Well, I'm gonna defer to Mr. Van Gompel a little bit. He has a little bit of knowledge about this. Once we get a definitive direction from council, then we can start working on it in earnest. And I think what Councilmember Bulow's question was, is it more than just street assessments? And I think the short answer is yes.
Yeah, I look at their thing, it includes assessments, it includes charges, which would be the sidewalks, so I do think it would refer to the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, in my experience, the biggest concern that I've seen with deferments is no interest. And then we've created a disincentive for people to pay. The interest, it does turn off some people, so much so that they're like, I don't want it, but if somebody needs it.
Correct.
This is really not appreciably different, and I'm going to put Ms. Nyforth on the spot. It's unfortunate, but we already do this for our housing programs. They're interest-free in our case.
No,
There's a
small
little bit.
amount of
Oh, the
interest,
small,
yeah.
okay, I'm sorry, thank you. Good thing she's here. So, and we don't, it's a cash flow issue. So now that I've said it's a cash flow issue, that's when I'll swing it over to Mr. Van Gompel and, talk about that aspect of it.
Yeah, as Council Member Ford will remember, we just started a discussion at Long Range Finance about this topic. And I know that there's some concerns about the fact that on one hand, we're looking at eliminating special assessments, and I would just caution that discussion is basically on street reconstruction projects. But as you saw at the last city council meeting, we also have new utility construction going on that impacts a lot of residents. So I think we can kind of, in all due respect, follow two paths. One to set up a potential program similar to Eau Claire and have that in place for that new installation on utilities. As you saw, the large assessments for Clairville for water main and sanitary sewer. So,
and I do want, if I can interrupt you quickly, I want to make clear too that if we did adopt the policy word for word, it's included in there that if it's a large property with the capability of selling off portions of it, that wouldn't necessarily be covered by this policy. This is really about finding those dire situations where we know someone is going to lose their home.
So, my time in Eau Claire ended right about the time that this came in place. So I don't know all of the details of the plan, but I saw what was included in the packet, and we've had some additional inquiries to the city of Eau Claire about how their program's working. So I think we can take that and try to model something for the city of Oshkosh, and at the same time kind of pursue what we can with existing street reconstruction projects that we previously talked about. So I think there's room for basically both paths to be pursued. Timing, for me, a lot of this also relates to our potential debt issuance in 2024, and I would like to get that presented to council yet this spring. So hopefully we can have some programs in place for you to consider before that. So I would say in the next 60 to 90 days that we should have something. I'm assuming that timeline works for other staff members as well, but I was just kind of shooting from the hip a little bit.
Russ, I think the other point that I think Councilmember Ford was raising is, how quickly this can ramp up. Can we make it apply to older special assessments? I know Councilmember Esslinger has said that in the past too. Now, he was talking about the solution to eliminate, but can we go back if in fact, which I think not everybody's going to jump at this isn't for everybody, but to the degree, how difficult would it be? And I'm putting you on the spot, I apologize.
My gut reaction is, I think going back in time is going to be kind of a little bit more difficult in that the assessment resolutions were passed with the policies at the time. I would probably want to talk to our legal team about that before I'd make any additional comments. Certainly prospectively going forward, I think I don't have a lot of issues, but I think there might be some issues kind of doing a look back.
I was more in, I'll just clarify my question because I was trying to clarify Mr. Ford's point for the balances that remain on old assessment, not assessments that have been paid. I mean, I think that'd be darn near impossible to go back, but I'm talking about assessments that are currently outstanding, or even the ones that the council just approved for 2023 that aren't payable until 2024. Am I tracking you?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I guess I could just say, I don't think that this would be, I don't think there'd be a large amount. I mean, you'd have to be in a position to really be able to prove that you're going to lose your home if you get this assessment. I mean, the reason I've been asking for so long for that list of, the amounts of special assessments is to try to get a handle on what this would be. But even without that list, I can't imagine there's a massive number of times that this nightmare assessment
That would qualify for this program.
Yeah, when I talk to the city of Eau Claire, they don't have a huge volume either, but it is a tool that's available.
Yeah.
Before I answer that question, Mr. City Manager, I think we ought to talk with legal counsel about how this could all
That's fair.
work.
And for legal, I would just say we have not seriously looked into this yet. I think if that's the direction we go, we would certainly look into that and be prepared with an answer after we've had a chance to do that research.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stevenson, followed by Councilmember Buell.
Yeah, I was going to have similar questions about timing, but I think maybe you guys do your due diligence, maybe look a little bit more into it, and then have this item come back to us. And I was also just interested to see from Mike on kind of where you wanted to take this one. So I think it's a good idea to maybe have them both in tandem, and especially if they can cover that utility side of things that are potential road assessments not being part of a special assessment anymore. It could still cover those in the future too. So
And I believe we can still work on 35A, if we're talking about that.
Sure.
We can still work on that on a parallel path with 35B.
It's not meant to replace those efforts.
Yeah, and that was, and I didn't have a chance to ask you that specific question, so the answer is no, it's not intended to replace it. And that was my difficulty, because I was concerned that the council had said we want to look at to eliminate all the street assessments, and this is a deferment option. I wasn't sure, but now that Councilmember Ford's clarified it, that helps me, and then we can talk to legal and finance and take a look at this. So happy to pursue that path and report back to you on what we can do.
Councilmember Buell.
I don't think I've ever gotten an email from Mr. Ford that I've liked more than this. Every time I read the policy, it just makes so much sense, especially since it is a fairly narrow policy for the people that would be able to apply for it and get the relief. But it is there for the people that do need it, which is exactly what kind of policy it seems like we're looking for. My only request to staff is just to look at if we'd want some sort of a flat interest rate, or if we want to do prime plus 2, or how that doesn't need to be answered tonight, but.
Thank you.
But I can share some light on that real quick.
Okay.
Because this item has come up, and I know the mayor's been involved with it when it's come up to long-range finance in the past. We did talk about different options for establishing that interest rate. Long Range Finance Committee has talked about reviewing it on an annual basis based on how much our new debt issuance is going to cost. But they wanted to do an annual review of that, which, has some difficulties in that interest rates can vary, but it's also staying close to market. And we did discuss the potential of tying it to that, but the committee and then ultimately the city council approved just to do adjustments as conditions warrant adjustments. So that's the long answer to your question.
And for anybody watching at home, to Councilmember Bulow's statement about Mr. Ford's email, that is in the agenda packet, and it's page 426 and 427 of the agenda packet. You'll see it highlighted. So if you're really interested in it, if you want to geek out on it tonight, just check out those pages and kind of get an idea of what Councilmember Ford is
It's worth
proposing
it.
here.
I see nothing, excuse me, I see nothing else on this discussion. All right. Mr. Ford's up again with some information on permeable pavement policy.
Yeah,
I think you had an interesting session you attended.
Yeah, this one will be quick. So the Sustainability Board had their meeting, and they do this every year, where they have the UWO students present their capstone projects of the policy ideas. A couple things came up. The one that appeared to have the most traction, at least for me in the audience, was changes to our permeable pavement policy. And they sent around a model ordinance, and we don't really, I don't know how people feel about it. I don't claim to be an expert in this, but I just want to put on everyone's radar that they're going to be sending information from all these projects to us as a council to see if we have an appetite for pursuing any of these things.
That's awesome. And just to kind of expand on that, so these are the students from UW Oshkosh. I forget what the exact program is, but
I think it's environmental studies, sustainability. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like their capstone project.
Yep.
I just work.
But just that, they spend a considerable amount of time working on these projects to, make suggestions on how to better, our community. And I had a chance to visit a little while back. And always interesting to see what some of our younger college-age students are coming up with, for how to keep moving us forward. So appreciate you bringing it up. This is a carryover. The next one is a carryover item from the last council meeting review of Resolution 21498, creating parameters for usage of American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds. And Councilmember Esslinger asked for this.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to keep this very short and pretty simple. I learned tonight that some council members don't like going back on things that have happened with councils in the past, so don't throw any sticks or stones at me on this. So this is, what's that?
Tomatoes?
Tomatoes is fine. I like tomatoes.
You're soft.
Just make sure there's no stem on them. So what I'd like to do here is, this is from the council in 2021 had a policy for the ARPA funds of, help me out, Mr. Roloff, or Ms. Meeforth here. So it was 75% of the dollars were to go to, whether shovel ready or whatever the term was, for, 75% of the dollars go towards that. 25% go towards nonprofit organizations. So to the best of my knowledge, a lot of money has gone for the quote city projects. Some money has gone for the other folks, and I think it's money well spent. Then we got ourselves, and I don't want to rehash the whole thing, but we got into a problem where some people were putting in requests for the dollars that were left, and other people didn't know that they could do it. And so we do have some money left over. But, the reality is these funds are generated by just the average taxpayer. So this is just an idea. And instead of going back and starting the process over for the city manager or us, and finding out where the rest of those dollars would go, I would just simply propose using whatever money is left for city projects. Not to say that the nonprofits don't deserve it. I wish you could hand out money, whatever they wanted. It's not reality. But as we know now with the inlet pipes for the water and God knows how many other projects we could use that money for, I would just like to help out the average taxpayer and use that one-time money for, Mr. Roloff, how often does this happen where you have these pipes that get into this state where we're gonna spend a lot of money, and while we're scratching to try to find money to cover this, I'm sure that these dollars could be used for it. Am I correct in that assumption?
Well, any infrastructure project is certainly eligible. Utility infrastructure is probably more specifically mentioned. But that's certainly, yeah, up to council. And I know Mr. Ford essentially authored this resolution.
Yeah, and I want to make it perfectly clear, at that time, it probably was a great idea. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying now, advancing a couple of years and however many months, my proposal is just we use the rest of the dollars for city projects. And Mr. Roloff, you and your staff come up with what you think would be the best way to use those dollars, and then it would be up to us to make that decision. So just wanted to throw that out and see if it had any support.
I think it's clear, but I just want to make sure it is. You're referring to using up the remaining balance of the 25, what we call the 25% for the non-city programming. So
Correct.
it's roughly a little over under 2.5 million, if my numbers are roughly correct.
Yeah,
right?
a little over 2.5.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Just wanted to make sure
100%.
I'm crystal clear on that. Okay. Questions, comments? Yeah, Deputy Mayor.
I would say I don't think I would be supportive of that. I think the intent of the 25% for non-city programming or direct assistance was, to be able to look at what are the longer-term impacts from the pandemic, giving consideration to any concerns that are brought up by the DEI committee. And I think to the point of Councilmember Esslinger of alleviating or providing relief to taxpayers, I think that type of assistance and does have an impact. We've had a lot of focus on how do we provide assistance to organizations that work with those who are experiencing homelessness, domestic violence. I think nonprofits have a role in providing relief, and I think us investing in those organizations kind of indirectly provides relief to taxpayers and working in some complex issues. So I would not be supportive. I think the policy that we have, knowing that we have 2 million left, I think I'm good with that direction. We still have some impacts that we're seeing from the pandemic.
Seeing as nobody else pressed, I'll make a brief comment on this too. The policy that Councilmember Ford authored back in 2021, this actually set the stage for many other communities to start following along. We led the way. City Manager Roloff was patient and deliberate with his process that he created, which was emulated by others. And this type of an idea that Councilmember Ford put pen to paper on also was. It gave us as a council a framework, but it also gave staff, for the city of Oshkosh a framework of how to operate this, as you mentioned, this once in a lifetime trench of money that we were, that was given to us from the federal government, from the taxpayers. And I'm as fiscally conservative as it probably comes up here most nights, and I would love for this to be able to go towards, every single dollar to go towards a city project that I know is absolutely needed. But I made an agreement at that time that I thought it was a good idea that we do set aside a specific portion of this, because we knew that there were not just individuals, but segments of our community that they were not going to be able to get federal funds or state funds to support them through the pandemic. Should this money have already been spent? I think that's a good debate the seven of us could potentially have, that it probably should already be spent. We have been patient, maybe too patient sometimes, right? But I think what we've done so far has been right. My worry, and I know why Russ is walking up, we only have a small window of time to get this allocated and basically spent. If we get to a certain window of time in 2024 where it's crunch time, my opinion will change very rapidly to move this towards city infrastructure supported projects. So given that, just, those are my thoughts on it. So my support for the, keeping that, that remaining roughly 10%, 12% that's left out there, it's only going to last another 6 months or so probably, before I'm fully supportive of moving this back into the city's coffers.
I think you are, if you're asking me a question,
Nope.
you are correct, Mr. Mayor. As a finance director, I came up just to advise you that there are requirements that we have to comply with the Treasury Department. And that it has included periodic reports to Treasury Department on how we're spending money. The rules and regulations for ARPA money is about that thick. If you ever want to fall asleep, start reading that. But the long and short of it is, by the end of 2024, we have to have those funds committed. So whether you're dealing with city infrastructure projects or non-infrastructure projects, however that allocation gets determined by the elected body, we need to have those funds committed. And as finance director, I'm going to be coming to you again, first part of 2024. We did it part of the budget process, but we have infrastructure funds available that need to be committed by the end of 2024. And so we will be coming forward with additional considerations for at least the infrastructure portion of that. The non-infrastructure portion, I'll leave that up to you, but please keep in the back of your mind that we need to make those commitments by the end of 2024.
Councilmember Bulow, followed by Councilmember Ford, and then Councilmember Hayes.
Thank you, Councilmember Esslinger, for, bringing this forward and having, starting this conversation. Stop it over there, Hayes. You're breaking me up too. I agree with Deputy Mayor Erickson that I think that the portion that was set aside for non-infrastructure projects should stay there, and I think that does also have a very direct impact to taxpayers as well by going through the nonprofits and other services that can be done. My direction back when we were talking a couple weeks ago, which kind of started a lot of this, was I'd like to see a robust communication campaign for applications for these remaining non-infrastructure ARPA money. I don't know what you want to think is a realistic timeline, if we want to say end of February or something like that, setting a new date that we can hold to, but really do a communication campaign with the community to let them know, get them in now, this is the last round, let's consider what we can get, and then move forward with that. That would be my preference on this. Councilmember Ford?
Yeah, just on background, I mean, so the origins of that policy, we came up with that 75-25 split by trying to estimate how much interest costs we'd save by funding CIP scored projects using ARPA funds instead of going out on a 10-year note. So that, right, the logic of that was not arbitrary. It was to capture those savings and direct those into community organizations. I think it's helped us avoid some of the problems that some of our neighbors have had. You don't have to go very far down the Google rabbit hole to see some of the debates about ARPA funds in the area. So I think it's worked well until about a month ago. So if people won't change it, that's our business. But that's at least the logic behind the policy. I think it's helped us.
It's a good problem to have. I mean, how we want to spend our money, it's a good thing.
Councilmember Hayes, followed by Councilmember Stevenson.
I would not be in support of changing it. My issue at the council meeting in which this became an issue, that I made it an issue, I guess, was not that there's funds remaining with too little time to disperse them. The process by which the community, those organizations that could use the funds, are aware that they're available and that they could apply, and then a process used to determine how they would be allocated, that was my issue. I don't fear that we are not able to allocate those funds by the end of 2024. I don't have that fear, and I would not support using the 25% non-infrastructure funds for any other project. I think the policy, the resolution in place was appropriate. I don't think that the procedure to receive information was the best. And knowing that, I think we could just do better, that's all. No fault of anyone's. I think we now know that we could have had, as Council Member Bulow said, twice, I'm agreeing with you, that I think that the process we use could be better, that's all. So that more people are informed, because I, just in my history of not even being on council, but discussions regarding ARPA funds, whether it's the city or the county, I know many organizations that would have applied had they known that funds were still available. And I think that that really stood in the way of us already having them dispersed. I don't feel that there's an urgency at this point when we have a year. I think a February date would be appropriate.
Okay. Councilmember Stevenson.
I just clicked my button because everybody else did. No.
Wanted to get in.
But no, thank you, Paul, for asking the question. I think it definitely needs to be asked. And while I support this money going to nonprofits, I kind of agree with Matt that I think we need to keep our eye on this. We need to make sure these dollars are going to be spent. We need to make sure they're allocated. And if they're not, then maybe it'll be a different discussion. But I certainly am also very excited to see what type of stuff nonprofits will come up with to see how we can help them. So,
Yeah.
Specifically did not say
Organizations.
community
Non-community
orgs. Okay.
Direct assistance, yep. Before the city manager goes, yeah, we knew, and I don't want to repeat myself, but, you know, dads tend to do that sometimes. We knew that there was going to be significant segments that weren't going to get help, and we just wanted to make sure that we had that ability. I think city managers probably heard it pretty clear over the last, couple weeks maybe, regarding this process and trying to get these wrapped up. You know, on one hand, internally, there's a sense of urgency, and there's a sense of making sure that this community is aware and move that process forward in a responsible and, respectful manner. So I think I think there's pretty clear marching orders for.
Did I hear us all agree to February? Was that?
That was just what I threw out.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
Is that doable?
part of me wanted to, out of respect for Councilmember Uslinger bringing up the issue, I wanted to, let the council have an opportunity to weigh in on that. And plus with the holidays, starting up process during the holidays would have pretty much been fruitless. But interestingly enough, since the council discussion, some other nonprofit groups, some of which had never applied for funds before, took notice to it. I have one meeting this week already with one person, and the other part, I think, somebody said, I think Carl mentioned, maybe through February. We did have in here, talk about equity concerns voiced by the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. I think it'd be appropriate for the January agenda. I know they're not meeting this month, but perhaps just in general, get some general input from DEI, because the one thing that the Deputy Mayor mentioned, things have changed, and I want to give myself a little credit. There was something I put in a memo after Councilmember Ford brought this up, and it's like, we don't even know what some of these impacts are going to be. And certainly, and just as one example, the homeless issue has gotten worse. We all know that, we all acknowledge it, and so even that one issue, there are other issues out there, things that we didn't know, they're sort of like ticking time bombs. So I think there's an opportunity, given the fact that we've only allocated a little more than half of the funds. We still have a little, just about $2.5 million left. And I think getting out in the community and, seeing what needs are out there, re-engaging some folks or engaging some folks for the first time. We did have some meetings, if council members, I know Councilmember Erickson actually came to a couple of them. I appreciated her presence. We had some meetings during the day and in the evening, and we got $10 million in requests, even though council only doled out 2.7. There were a lot of requests out there. But what's new, and I think that's the Councilmember Hayes' point, what's out there that they either didn't know about it or they didn't even realize the tip of the iceberg that was there, and the iceberg that we've seen is pretty substantial. So I look forward to working with the council on getting the word out, and to the degree you can assist in that process, I'd certainly appreciate it.
Councilmember Resslinger.
Yeah, one further, just to think forward. Council, if you, Mr. Roloff, I don't know if you were here yet or not, but when we still had community development block grant funds that came from the federal government, and I remember back in the day, we would get a chunk of that, and then the council would determine where those monies went, and we would have a line at the dais of people coming up, literally crying for the money. So then it went, the dollars we put aside for the, I think it was the Oshkosh Foundation, they held meetings with the people that wanted the money, and they made a determination, well, they didn't make it, I think they made suggestions to the council, and it was up to the council then to take those suggestions or not. What I'm suggesting here is the big boys and girls that get elected, I think that we should go through that process, because I don't want the city manager and his staff reviewing this and making suggestions to us, because we get, like we had tonight, well, here's a couple emails, and them going back and forth with each other, and Mr. Roloff said this to her, and what does that mean? What's going on here? So then you get into, well, Mr. Roloff knows someone at this organization, they're getting more money than we're getting. Why is that? And so, and this is what I'm talking about, this stuff gets sticky, and people are going to be upset if they don't get money. So I think we've got to be the big boys and girls and make those decisions. While the city staff can be the conduit in taking all the applications, I would suggest that we make those recommendations without any suggestions from the staff.
I'm going to respond if on that one. I know previously, and it was a previous council, we've talked about previous council's actions, right? We were deliberate in the fact that, quite honestly, we wanted to eliminate the chance of pet projects amongst the 7 elected officials, because that was the rabbit hole that we were potentially going to go down. And we are seeing that at the county level and other municipalities around us throughout the state, throughout the country. While I disagreed with the action that council took a meeting or two ago on, in regards to the request that was in front of us, that was our way of saying, we don't agree. City Manager Roloff, we're entrusting you and empowering you to make a good recommendation to us. In that night, council spoke collectively and said, we don't agree with this. Send it back to the drawing board. That's a responsible process. And that was what the actual intention was of having him use, the city manager use, a scoring process. We were intentional about the city infrastructure projects, it needed to be in the CIP. This wasn't, staff members lining up at his door saying, I want, this is shiny new objects. These were previously scored, they're in the CIP for a reason, they need to get done. It helped make sure, we had a process already in place. I don't think it's a good idea for those applicants to come to us directly for the use of these funds. I think it sets a dangerous precedent, and it's, well, I'm gonna vote for yours if you vote for mine, and that's not something I'm interested in even bringing upon this body, in my own opinion. So I think the city manager's process, as we've talked, needs, it needs a revamp, and he's gonna do that, a refresh, and get back out there. The process that he did use the first time, it worked. And in my opinion, it worked well. So.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Okay. You said in the beginning you wanted to avoid what projects? I didn't hear the word.
Pet projects.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I just didn't hear the word.
Oh, sorry. Nope. Councilmember Beal?
I would second that. I do trust the city manager and his staff to collect, score, evaluate, and come to us with the recommendations that they see fit.
Councilmember Ford?
I'd agreed. I'd just add to it, the resolution we passed unanimously was specific about what our expectations were. So it wasn't us just saying, Mark, go ahead and give us our projects you want. We set out those criteria as a governance action, which I think was totally appropriate for our role in this form of government. So I wouldn't be in favor of changing that. I think that'd be inconsistent.
Councilmember Hayes?
I agree with Councilmember Esslinger that for the applications to come to council would provide for a more transparent process. I think many of us, after even leading up to the meeting in which this became an issue, were fielding lots of communications, whether in person or via email, from individuals who felt that it was not transparent and who had those exact thoughts, that their application was not being considered what another person's, or another organization's, application was. I'm not saying that I believe that there was anything done that was, unethical or not appropriate when it came to city staff reviewing them and sending them to council. I'm just saying that I do see the argument that it would make for a more transparent process than the one that we have, because then coming before council, the community gets to see who's applying and what they're asking for. I think that also lends to community stepping in, being aware, and maybe providing input. But that's just, I see both, is what I'm saying. So I've decided nothing.
Thank you.
I've landed nowhere but in the middle.
Any other thoughts or comments on this particular item? Okay. We'll move on. This next one's going to be actually pretty easy. I'm going to ask to lay this.
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Wait, before we move on, so I just want to be clear, so moving forward, we will have like a deadline in which we will start around, or that's?
I like the idea without totally committing to a date. I like what Councilmember Bulow said. We got to give a couple months for this. I think there's some value in getting to DEI. So you or I have to talk to Michelle, make sure it's on the January DEI agenda, because I think there is some value, and we've learned so much in the last couple of years. I think there's value to revisit this. And I'm committed to holding other informational sessions. Might be a little more challenging in the winter than it was in the middle of the summer, but I think we still got to do it. And I'm going to be meeting with some other folks in just getting their input. Go H&I, just so you know, because I had disclosed to council at the budget workshops, Go H&I's kind of been waiting. It's like, what does this mean? What does this mean? And then a couple others have approached me, but certainly with Go H&I, it's like we're going to start a process right after the first of the year, and we'll certainly, that's that would qualify under many different levels of what we had done previously. So just to let you know, that one's going to be coming, but there will be others, and as Russ said, the urgency doesn't seem like it's urgent, but he's right. It is a little more urgent because the committal part by the end of next year, it's coming. So thank you. I appreciate the input, and is that, Lakeisha, is that kind of where you were, the purpose of your question was kind of leaning towards something, give a date certain?
There will be a point in time in which applicants know that to be considered, they should have their application by a certain date.
Very good.
Yeah, that's what I would like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you. The next one I'm going to make actually pretty easy. I need to lay this one over until our next meeting in terms of being able to provide council with some background information that I wanted to give, and I did, I'll be quite honest, I ran up against the deadline and did not supply it to you in a sufficient amount of time. So that's why it wasn't included in tonight's agenda, and it's totally on me, so I'd like to just put this on the first meeting in January. So in that time, I will make sure that you get informed as to the information I want to give you. Councilmember announcements and statements. Anybody have announcements or statements? Go ahead.
Yeah, we had a very exciting long-range finance committee, as they're always exciting. But we're continuing to proactively review all of our policies, especially before Director Van Gompel retires. So we're looking at, we talked about the special assessment policy, the TIF policy, and reviewed the application, and then the fixed asset policy. And the idea is to have a guidebook that'll have all these things in one place.
All right. Nothing else? For those interested, tomorrow afternoon, Parks Building dedication and ribbon cutting for the Parks Administration and Operations Facility on Witzel. And that is open to the public, and there'll be some brief tours afterwards if anybody's interested in seeing the new facility that the Parks Department gets to work on. So,
And a hot breakfast.
with
3
me.
o'clock, no breakfast at 3.
Yeah, Councilmember Buelow.
Sorry, I did think of one. I attended the funeral ceremony for K9 Magic this morning. It was very beautiful over at the Best Western, and it was a huge loss for the city. The thoughts continue to go out to Kayla and Zapata, who worked with them. I know it was there was quite a bit of videotaping. Do you know, is it available on Oshkosh Media, the ceremony that was there?
I'm sure it will be, but I'll check and ask.
Okay.
No, thank you for that. Yeah. Magic joined us just a few years ago, but made immediate and lasting and deep impact on the community and those who which she served. And as you mentioned, thoughts go out to Officer Zapata. I'm sorry, I don't know the...
Kayla Rodriguez is the other part of that team.
Correct, the
Yeah.
tandem of that. Yep, thank you, and OPD and the entire OPD family. So Officer Magic will be missed very much in OPD. So with that sad note, we'll turn it over to the city manager for his announcements and statements.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are 2 memos in your agenda packet, one for on-call transportation engineering assistance, whether it comes from Public Works or the Transportation Department. KL Engineering is on call for those types of things should something come up. Sometimes things happen even at the planning level that they need some traffic review done. And then the other one is with Tyler Technologies. This is an annual contract we have with them for their annual maintenance of our commercial assessment process. So they've been doing it for a number of years. We're very satisfied with their work, and so we're renewing that contract. And then in your agenda packet, as a summary of the outstanding issues, gave you a little update. And some of this will change when we talk about my review and talk about goals for the years. Usually the goals for the years are also incorporated in there, so we'll be talking about that after at the council meeting following tonight's closed session. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Deputy Mayor, do you have a motion?
I move following the adjournment of this meeting, the common council may convene in closed session pursuant to section 19.851C of the Wisconsin State Statutes to consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically the annual performance review evaluation of the city manager.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? If you please take the roll going into closed session.
Stevenson?
Aye.
Buelow?
Aye.
Hayes?
Aye.
Esslinger?
Aye.
Erickson?
Aye.
Ford?
Aye.
Mughawar?
Aye.
Carried 7.
Take a motion to adjourn in a second.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.